Welcome, and thank you for joining our NDSP webinar focused on the home study education option. My name is Erica McCoy, the Program Manager for the NDSP. I am joined today by a cross-functional team who all support the non-DoD schools program, from our Chief of Resource Management and processors who work to reimburse your claims, to our education specialist, to the program analyst to review policy and dutifully respond to your inquiries daily. You will have a chance to see our faces and also meet a few of us as we go through today's presentation. It is our goal today that we provide clarity on the upcoming release of the NDSP Home Study Guidance, which will go into effect this upcoming school year 21-22. It is our goal to be as transparent as possible, as we believe the processes will yield that outcome. Lastly, and most importantly, we are excited to have opportunities to engage with you more than just via email, this being the first of more sessions to come. We will release a schedule for follow-up sessions that will commence in the fall. The goal of those sessions will be a little different. We'd like to focus more on learning what is working for you and what is not, because we'd like to commit to updating our FAQs and our tools to make sure they are supportive. Today, admittedly, we will do most of the sharing. Before we launch into the nuts and bolts, it is incumbent that we paint a little of the background which led us to this juncture. It is probably of no surprise to you that our home study community has grown pretty significantly over the years. The NDSP is about 4,000 students overall, and after the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the home study population was well over 300 students. But 5 years ago, we supported about half that. We also realize that we have a variety of reasons why families may choose the home study option, including those who avidly homeschool no matter the location, to the other end of the spectrum, which are families who have been propelled into the home study experience for a variety of reasons. Maybe educational options at the duty station are not what they desire. Along with these increased numbers and the variety of home study experiences, we honestly have run into many conundrums over the years with regard to what the NDSP is fiscally and legally able to fund. And dare I say this, but it is an ongoing case study, especially as new virtual resources become available. We have made many shifts in practice over the years, but admittedly have been delayed in making those same clarifications in policy. And we also learned that the Department of State updated their policy on the home study option in January. And you may not know this, but it is by law that the NDSP is to follow the Department of State to the maximum extent possible. But in order for us to do this, we really wanted to ensure there were no conflicts with DoD fiscal law, and quite frankly, we wanted to ensure the intent of the changes and how those changes would align to the gaps that we had already identified. So while we wish we could have released this information sooner, we really wanted the information to be as clear as possible. We're leveraging our lessons learned over the years and also our complex role as educators, policymakers, and fiscal managers. We're also parents, former teachers, homeschooling liaisons, public school administrators, financial specialists. Some of us have raised families overseas, others here in U.S. public schools. A few of us have even homeschooled our own children. And I only share this with you so that you understand we truly are looking at our guidance from a variety of lenses. But we do not pretend to be the expert on your child and what you may feel is necessary for the education of your child. We are here, however, to shed light on the new guidance so that you can make the best purchasing decisions possible. We encourage you to peruse the FAQs that have been posted to our website. And as Dr. Shanna Smalls mentioned earlier, please post any questions in the Q&A feature. We will get to as many questions as possible at the end of our presentation. We will also update the FAQs on our website with any unanswered questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Lori Edom, our Chief Resource Management, to provide an overview on the new workflow for home study.
Thank you, Erica. Initially, you will submit your home study education plan via the ndsp.homestudy email box. Please carefully review the allowable and non-allowable expenses when creating your plan. You'll want to be sure that the items purchased are allowable and also align with your chosen curriculum. You'll then complete the reimbursement tool, which is an electronic version of the sponsor claim form. This newly created tool will be explained a little later in this presentation, and it'll assist you with your home study reimbursement submission. You can file your reimbursement as needed, but we ask not more than once a month and after services have been received. If you have multiple children, please file a claim for each individual child, since each child has his or her own DSSR allowance. Submit your completed reimbursement claim and receipts to the ndsp.homestudy email box or through the sponsor portal. If needed, our team will reach out for clarification on the submitted items for reimbursement to identify how the purchased items align with your child's curriculum. Please ensure you have all receipts cross-referenced on the reimbursement tool and indicate how the material is used within the curriculum. Required documents for reimbursement include the sponsor reimbursement claim, invoices, receipts, or proof of payment. All invoices and receipts must be in English. Translations can be obtained through the Military OneSource or on an online translation application. Reimbursement is processed to your bank account on file with the NDSP within 30 business days of receipt. You can review your claims and reimbursements in your sponsor portal, which is a window to all of your NDSP reimbursements, or via the funding detail sheet, which is emailed to you after reimbursement has been completed. Erica will now go over the allowable and non-allowable items with you. Erica?
Thank you, Lori. Okay, so the full allowable and non-allowable list is available on the NDSP website. And these items on the slide really are the shifts that have been made in the new policy. A couple of things to keep in mind. The premise for allowable and non-allowables is based on two primary questions. Is the item required and necessary for your chosen curriculum and the requisite course? And the other question is this an item that is generally available to most students at no cost in the U.S. public schools, more specifically in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia? Other notable shifts: 7th and 8th grade is now included in the secondary grade span and now has an increased allowance of $21,500. Music, art, and PE have increased to 2 hours per week per elective subject for K through 6, and is 4 hours per week per elective subject for 7 through 12. Some notable items on the non-allowable are specialty materials and collectors are not allowable. And I'll also address broader use as well as supplemental materials. And by supplemental materials, we mean things such as Legos, books, academic games. Supplemental materials can be considered reimbursable when they are clearly aligned to the course requirements. Some examples would be British literature, Shakespeare plays, things that can clearly demonstrate that they are necessary and intended for the specific course of study. Whereas an example such as Connect 4 is not specifically tied to a course of study and is considered a broader use item, even though it might have an educational purpose. We understand this is the potential for the largest gray area and may pose a lot of questions, especially for those of you developing your own home study programs. So we suggest that you please reach out to us using the ndsp.homestudy@dodea.edu mailbox if you have any questions before you make the purchase. Next, I'll pass the baton over to Dr. Shanna Smalls, who will describe the updates to the education plan.
Thank you, Erica. The majority of, all of our homeschool parents complete an education plan annually, and they may wonder what the purpose is. The purpose of the education plan is to develop a comprehensive roadmap for your child's academic school year. It is considered a working document that can be adjusted at any time. When developing your plan, consider what you want your child to accomplish by the end of the school year. Look ahead and look behind. Are there gaps that you need to fill with varied grade level curriculum? Are there particular units of study that you want to incorporate for your child's school year? Our newly updated education plan will assist in solidifying your objectives. Think of the plan as a map to your child's progress and ultimately their academic success. When choosing state or DMV standards, ensure that you have researched the requirements so that you will be prepared for an unexpected return stateside And be prepared in case you need to show documentation of your child's home study education to their new school district. Many states require a portfolio of work samples, assessments that show progress towards grade level standards, and end of year completion and proficiency data. Make sure that you stay organized and informed. To complete your education plan, first, you will determine what type of curriculum you will use. For example, will it be blended, which is a combination of virtual courses and traditional home-based individually developed coursework? Or will it be an all-in-one online curriculum such as a BECA? Whatever you decide, please note that on the updated education plan, you will have to self-certify that your academic plan aligns with those of a school system within the DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia area, which is a new DSSR requirement. The reason for this alignment is to ensure that your child is capable of having a smooth transition back to U.S. schools if your family PCSs. Don't fret. The DMV's academic requirements square with those of many other states and should not require you to make significant changes in your planning. You will also have to certify that you're monitoring your child's progress. Adequate progress means that they are on target or above grade level in each of their core subject areas and their overall performance compared to your selected state's academic requirements. High school students will need to be on track to graduate within their 4-year cohort and be prepared for their post-secondary ventures. Next, you will look at the courses your child will take, both core and electives. Will you need to supplement the coursework with additional materials? As you're planning, you should start gathering a listing of texts, materials, and other resources required. The list doesn't have to be comprehensive and can be tweaked, but it will help you plan your purchases and get insight on any items you wish to have predetermined as allowable or non-allowable. You may always reach out to us if you have questions or need clarification on the plan or reimbursement items. In the near future, we will also place a tutorial on our website to assist you. Lastly, you will notice another addition to the education plan, the private instructor request. Dr. Kevin O'Brien will come and explain the requirements for this element in more detail.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smalls. The following chart demonstrates the steps needed to hire a private instructor for your home study program. The expectation is that the parent is the primary instructor in a home study program. However, provided the following conditions are met, a private instructor may be approved for your program. Students must be enrolled in an accredited and recognized home study program with a non-synchronous delivery model. When families are enrolled in accredited programs but receive instruction in real time or synchronous, they are not eligible for an instructor. The list of accredited programs can be found on the non-DoD schools program website. The rationale for the instructor must be need-based, such as when the parent cannot provide the instruction due to the complexity of the content, i.e. chemistry, calculus, advanced foreign language, etc. The instructor does not have to be certified, but must be able to adequately teach the course of study. They cannot provide other duties within the household, such as babysitting, house cleaning, transportation, etc. The private instructor must incur in a setting other than a school and in a core course. Core courses include math, reading language arts, science, social studies, and foreign language. The amount of time necessary for the private instructor to teach the content will be commensurate with the amount of time provided to students in public schools within the DMV and/or DoDEA schools. The amount of time will be determined by your education specialist. The authorization will specify the beginning and end date of the eligibility for an instructor and the number of minutes a week that are approved. The sponsor will be responsible for any fees outside the authorized time. To request a private instructor, be sure you meet the criteria and reach out to our email address, ndsp.homestudy@dodea.edu. Your education specialist contact information can be found on the NDSP website. And back to Lori Edom for more information on our sponsor reimbursement tool.
Thank you, Kevin. The sponsor reimbursement tool was created for a better computerized submission approach for the homeschool claims. We've created the sponsor reimbursement claim form in an electronic format for easier listing, calculation, and submission. As mentioned earlier, please use one form per child due to the individual DSR allowance per child. We've added a foreign currency conversion tool as well as a running total for the claim submission. I'll drill down on the specific helpful tips of the document. Sometimes you'll purchase material on the economy in your local foreign currency. The currency converter allows you to add one rate, which will automatically calculate a one rate conversion on the reimbursement tool. Please use the oanda.com daily rate of the day that you submit your claim. You'll need to cross-reference receipts, content area, description item purchased, and cost with each transaction submitted. We've added drop-down categories for your assistance. Please use the comments to assist in providing additional information you feel will assist in processing your claim. As noted, receipts should cross-reference each transaction. Reimbursement cannot be processed prior to the items being shipped or after services have been received. For streamlined services, please consider uploading documents via the safe and secure sponsor portal or email to ndsp.homestudy@dodea.edu. We'll also provide recorded videos showing you how to complete the reimbursement tool step by step on our website in the near future. Please watch for that coming. This concludes our presentation on our home study program today. Now we'll transition to the question and answer segment. Dr. Kevin O'Brien will moderate our Q&As. Kevin?
Thank you so much. We've received so much good information today, and we do have a few questions that are popping in, but just wanted to make sure everybody could see this nice Q code behind me and that's on your screen. If you use your phone and click on that Q code, it'll take you directly to our frequently asked questions page on the NDSP website. We plan to keep that page up to date. We do plan to keep that up to date as much as possible as questions come in. In addition to that, you can see our ndsp.homestudy@dodea.edu email address. You can always write us at that email address and ask any questions that you may have. Old school, if you want to pick up the phone and give us a call, there's a couple of phone numbers on there as well. One of the first questions that came up was already answered to the person, but in addition to this live session you're seeing right now, we will have this available for you on our website as a recorded, and all of the information and slides that come in will be available to our folks. So the next question, I'm going to switch over to Erica McCoy, and she's going to start answering some of our questions here. So Erica, the first question, do receipts have to be translated to English?
And actually, Lori, I'm going to punt over to you.
Yep.
Just, yeah.
That's good.
Not because
That's
I don't
good.
know the answer, but Lori, I would prefer you answer that question in more specificity. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you so much. Yes, we ask that receipts are translated to English. This encourages and decreases the time of us having to go and research the translation to identify exactly what is being purchased. So yes, we do ask that receipts be translated to English, as well as you can get that translation service from Military OneSource. or you can use the Google Translate application. There are multiple translation applications out on the web today.
Thank you, Lori. As a follow-up to that, so the question is, do exchange rates, are they all based on the day we submit and not the day of purchase?
You can use the day of purchase, but if you use the reimbursement tool, it will assist you to be able to go in and translate those just with one conversion rate. Obviously, if you buy from Amazon.de, then it will provide a euro and a corresponding US dollar. You can use that, or you can put in the US dollar, the euro rate, and use the conversion tool, which will assist you in submitting your claim.
Great, thank you so much. The next question we're going to go back to Erica on. For PE, what types of activities will be covered? Most posts do not allow participation in school sports, so we have a limited amount of choices like tennis, horseback riding, etc.
Good question. Okay, so under the new guidance, the way that we would determine what qualifies for PE, music, or art. So we're looking at group classes. Groups will be 2 or more students. They can be online classes as well. They would be what we would consider commensurate with time allocations for a child in the US. So that's where we discussed earlier about the 2 hours per week for kindergarten through 6th grade, not to exceed 4 hours per week for grades 7 through 12. And the other caveat is activities that would not be considered competitive sports teams. So there's a variety of activities that will qualify for PE, but it could not be specialized. So horseback riding would be something that we would consider specialized, because that typically would not be available to a public school student in the DMV. But other activities, I'll just list a few that come to mind that we would consider to be age appropriate, that qualify as being group, and would also not be considered a competitive sport, would be things like potentially yoga, dance, martial arts, potentially lessons, but not competitive sports teams. And so those are the kinds of activities that would be considered allowable. And again, if you have specific questions or things that you've had covered in the past and you're wondering if those things would still be considered allowable, please feel free to reach out to us to ask more specifically.
Great. The next question, do you have a link to the DMV guidelines and standards?
We can post that on our website if we're talking about the actual standards themselves. We certainly can provide that as a resource to you. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Lori, I'm going to go back to you. We have a question requesting support being available for having receipts translated. Can you give us an overview of what supports are available to have receipts translated?
So on the translation of the receipts, we basically need an understanding of what you are purchasing, especially in locations where as an example, in Japan, they use hiragana and katakana and kanji. We would not be able to understand or know exactly what that would be. It would delay the processing of your receipt. So it's really important for you to help us know what you've purchased. As you know, we are required by law to have receipts for any disbursement that's made on behalf of the U.S. government. And so anything that you can do to assist us and to decrease the amount of processing time will just get money back in your pocket more quickly.
Great, thank you, Lori. As a follow-up question, do we have to use the new reimbursement tool, or can we continue to use the tool from last year?
Mm-hmm. Of course, we don't mandate that you use the new tool. The tool is used, I think, as you would find as you start to use it, you'll find that it really helps you. It helps you to be able to calculate the total of your reimbursement form, and it also helps you be able to cross-reference those receipts to the to the transaction that you're claiming reimbursement for. So while it is not mandated, we do request that you do use it, that you utilize it for your simplicity and for just assisting and submitting the forms. It will also help us because it's typewritten, that sometimes it's easier to read than using a handwritten claim form. Again, it's just trying to streamline and improve the business practice of submissions.
Great. Thank you so much. Erica, I'm going to go back to you for a couple of additional questions.
Sure.
For books, if your curriculum says, quote, 20 minutes of free reading, end quote, how do you determine which types of free read books are reimbursable?
Another good question. So the burden of proof is really on you as the parent/teacher, right? So what we're saying in the guidance is that the supplemental materials, books being included in that, other than textbooks, let's just say, it needs to be specifically tied to the curriculum, and it would be up to you in the education plan and or during the reimbursement and or again we can also pre-authorize to determine what would be appropriate. So your justification is what helps us determine what would be allowable in those types of cases where your curriculum, as you mentioned, says 20 minutes of reading. The other thing to be considering is if my child were in a public school, is this a book or series of books that I would be able to keep would my child keep this book? So there's a fine line in terms of what we are reimbursing for your own private, basically to keep. And we're also looking at what would have otherwise been available to the child if they were in a U.S. public school. So really the burden of proof would be on you to really demonstrate how it aligns specifically to the curriculum. And then our decision making would be based on your justification.
Excellent. So another question, in reviewing requirements for equipment for science classes, it appears that rental of equipment like microscopes is allowed. Can you provide a list of available organizations that provide rental equipment for those devices that can be delivered to OCONUS locations via FPO? I'm struggling to find local providers of that equipment.
Are we talking about equipment of microscopes? Was that the specific question, or generally speaking all? Because I know, again, rental, we're talking about laptops as being allowable for rentals, whereas curricular materials, microscopes, depending on the cost, and if it's specifically tied to the actual course of study, would actually be allowable as a purchase. And so do we have a link of all of the different providers that might allow or have rentals that would be allowable overseas? I would say no, we do not. What we can do is work with you to determine what exactly you're speaking of, if it's a laptop versus a microscope versus other kinds of science materials. I think we'd have to have a little more specificity with what the requirement is and how it's specifically tied to the course of study so that we could help to resolve that.
Great, and I actually think that's a really good point to bring up, is that so often with these questions, we want broad answers, we want lists, but it really boils down to that interaction between you and NDSP for your specific question, for your specific curriculum, or maybe your specific location. And that home study email address is the best way to reach us now if you have a specific question about your curriculum. And as a follow-on to that, a good example, maybe this next question, for STEM materials, what types of supplemental materials would be covered? Erica, do you want to take a stab at how to explain what would and wouldn't be covered for STEM materials as well?
Sure. Yeah, and again, I know it could be a little frustrating because I'm trying to answer the questions as specifically as I can. And admittedly, some of these questions will probably be easier answered when we know what curriculum you're selecting. Because again, the question to ask yourself is, how do the materials that you as teacher/parent, how do these materials specifically align to the course of study? STEM is a very broad term, science, technology, engineering, math. Well, what exact curriculum is being used to teach that? And then the answer to what materials would be covered is based on that first question. What's the curriculum? What's the course of study? And then from there, what age is the child, grade level? And then we'd be able to better determine what types of materials would be allowable. I will say what's not allowable, maybe a little easier to discern, is specialty or collectible items. The items for STEM more specifically, and really any course of study, also need to have, again, a curriculum attached. They need to have an specific instructional component. So it can't have broader use. And so I'll, say that there are some materials that have been determined as STEM over the years that we would look at to say, how is it specifically tied to your course of study and or curriculum? And does it have only specific academic or educational, is it necessary for the course of study, as opposed to potentially broader use? And so I think to answer that question, that we would need to know what the curriculum is that is being selected, so that we could look at that to determine what materials would or would not align with that.
Great. And one more question for you, Erica. Could you please confirm if tennis is allowed in a group for PE?
Tennis, as long as it is not a competitive team, is allowable up to 2 hours for K through 6, 4 hours, 7 through 12, but not so any of the equipment is considered personal use. So rackets, balls, those kinds of things are broader use and personal use items. So the lessons themselves as part of your PE curriculum would be reimbursable. The personal equipment that would be attached is not.
Great. And along those same lines, what are the requirements, if any, for, quote, public advertising for those group classes, subjects like music and art?
I'm not sure that I completely follow the question. I'll try to answer, and then if I'm off the rails, someone can maybe rein me back in. When we say group class, it needs to be 2 or more students. In the past, they had to be already established in the community. And so I don't know if that's kind of the direction the question was going. And so while that is still something to be considered, it also has been lessons learned that in some communities, there aren't available, already established in the community courses, because perhaps you're in a location where you're the only, English speaking student, so forth and so on. So the requirement is that it's a group class, 2 or more students. I'm not sure that I quite understand if it's publicly advertised and how we would know that. So I'm sorry if I'm not completely answering that question. And maybe with follow-up to that could be either posted here or sent to our email, and we can try to answer that more specifically.
Exactly. And I think that answers the question. I know when I've traveled to many locations around the world, that was a question that often came up at our town halls. They wanted to be able to prove to us, so to speak, that class was available to the public. And oftentimes it would be advertised at the embassy or the consulate. There would be a flyer on the wall that said group tennis lessons, non-competitive on Tuesdays and Thursdays at such and such. And our families would literally like PDF a copy of that to us. So when that's available readily, by all means, send that to us. When it's not available readily, then reach out to us directly and make sure that it's something that would be covered. I believe at this point, I have one more question that I haven't answered here in the group, and it was about a specific curriculum. And I'm trying to get back to it here. A parent had asked about a specific curriculum being available for their child or being reimbursable. But the bottom line is if you have a specific curriculum that you want to purchase and you want to double check that it's going to be reimbursable, you can send that directly to our ndsp.homeschool@dodea.edu email address, and we'll be able to get back to you more specifically, because there's so many different ones in the world, and the number of them have exploded in the past 5 years, and even more so in the past 2 years. It's best to just reach out to us in advance and make sure that curriculum would be eligible for reimbursement. 9 times out of 10 it's going to be, but again, we want to make sure that we're answering your questions more specifically.
Kevin, can I just chime in on that?
Yes.
Just, I think, to clarify, because maybe a little confusion on the curriculum being reimbursable. We just want to make sure we clarify that there's one question about if it's reimbursable, and maybe a different course of questioning if you're also intending to request a private instructor, because as Kevin mentioned earlier, the course of study and or curriculum has to be regionally accredited and or recognized, and that list of programs will be available on our website. If you're looking for if you have a need and require an instructor, there are specific curriculum that have to be utilize. And there's a long list, and many of them are very common and they have to be accredited and or recognized. But that doesn't mean that those are not all of the programs that are allowable. And so I don't want anyone to be confused about what we mean by recognized and or accredited. That is specifically, those are recommendations. Again, those become much easier for you as a family to be able to transition back to the States or to another school. But if you are or have found other curriculum that you are interested in using, again, as Kevin mentioned, we certainly will follow up with you to clarify. But I just didn't want anyone to be confused when they see the list, if we're suggesting that that's the only list. And again, it's a very lengthy list, so there's several to choose from, and many of them are ones that our families are already using, and this one may be one of them. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, great. Thank you so much. I think we've had a lot of really good questions today. It's been a great opportunity for our families to have a lot of information be shared with them, and also be able to ask some specific questions. I didn't mention earlier, but there will be future webinars, and I know that Erica's going to wrap things up for us here, and she may mention that again. But this is just the beginning of a series of opportunities for you to interact with us, potentially in a live session just like this, and or with your local education specialist or regional education specialist or your processing team member that may be processing your invoices. So we plan to do more of these types of webinars and opportunities to interact with our folks in the future. Again, I can't stress enough, use the QR code there, jump on our frequently asked question page, and make sure that the question that you are about to ask isn't already answered. We plan to keep that up to date the best that we can. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Erica, and she's going to wrap things up for us here today.
As Kevin mentioned, and I echo, thank you. We all thank you for your participation, for your questions. This is how we learn and grow, and this is how we've gotten to this point by your questions thus far. And as Kevin mentioned, we will have additional sessions. Less of a sit and get. Today really honestly was for us to be able to share information with you to try to provide as much clarity. And as we begin to roll out the new tools and the new guidance, the FAQs, in the fall, what we'd love to do is really have more roundtable kind of approach so we can really learn from you about what's working and where we can provide more clarity. Leading up to that, again, please use the website and the FAQs that are available. We will continually update them. We will post the recording of our live session to our website. And when the new tools, so the reimbursement tool and the new education plan, are not quite on our website just yet. So when they are there, we will send out an email to all of our families, just like you got this invite for today's session. You'll receive an email, and it also will be on our website. And our goal is to have that up to you, up and available by the beginning of July. So just wanted to make that point. With that, we again thank you for your engagement and for your participation today, and we look forward to future engagement with you.